Hello guys, welcome back to the Quick Start AngularJS course. It's time to start our journey from static templates to dynamic views. The web is dynamic, the web is changing. Every day we are having new experiences on the web. Even if you have never coded a dynamic site but you know how to code the static one, it's time to convert those static pages to dynamic views. Let's make them live. Let's make them fun for the users. Let's make them Angular way. HTML is great for declaring static documents, but it falters when we try to use it for declaring dynamic views in web applications. AngularJS lets you extend HTML vocabulary for your application. The resulting environment is extraordinarily expressive, readable, and quick to develop. HTML was not designed for dynamic views. HTML is a declarative language. Angular utilizes this speciality of HTML, and instead of taking imperative approach like other frameworks do, it's declarative. Let's start making our static views first. Our initial analysis of views will definitely help us coding our static pages fast. We should continuously refer them and make changes wherever required. As you know, software development is an iterative process. Change is the only constant. Let's start with our first static view, the header view. I suggest once again to code along with me to get the best result out of this course. I will be using Aptana Studio to code our application as it has built-in server as well. Feel free to use any other of your favorite tool like Notepad++, Brackets, or Microsoft Visual Studio. You can see I have already coded the HTML and CSS for the header view. I have included the AngularJS script file in this HTML. I have included one more CDN location for Bootstrap CSS. Bootstrap is really nice framework for creating responsive web designs. We are interested in some of the ready-to-use CSS classes created in Bootstrap CSS. Using Bootstrap CSS, we can create nice tables, buttons, and forms. For more information on Bootstrap, you can visit getbootstrap.com. I have also included one more CSS, app.css, for our custom CSS code. Now let's run and understand the header view code. Okay, so I have created the wrapper div for the header, which is the container for the logo, tagline, and the navigation. I have added two span elements, one for the logo and one for the tagline with the class of logo and tagline respectively. Both the span elements are floated to the left using pull-left utility class from the Bootstrap CSS file. The navigation is wrapped in the navWrapper class and it's also floated to the left. The navigation links are created using Bootstrap nav and navbuilds classes. Now let's open the app.css file. You can see I have applied font related properties to logo, tagline, and some margins to achieve nice spacing between the elements. Okay, so this page is a static HTML. If I would like to change the logo, I need to change it here. If I would like to change the tagline, I have to open this HTML and do editing here. Doesn't sound good, right? As we have our model embedded in HTML elements, all the changes I have to do in this static template only. So let's revisit the analysis we did for our models, views, and controllers of header view. Now, if we want to make our header view dynamic, we have to move the static data to the model component. In order to have the model created, we need to create the controller component first. The controller is not only responsible for handling the user interaction on the view, but also responsible for loading the data for our views. So we should have the facility of creating controllers in AngularJS, and we have that. Angular provides us with a directive for it. Can you guess that? That's right, it's ngController. Now, I want the complete header view to be controlled by the header controller. So we want this complete header wrapper container element to be controlled by the controller. That's why we should define the controller on this element. You can define the controller here on this navigation element as well. But it doesn't seem right in our case as we want complete header to be controlled. So let's create the new app.js file to contain our custom JavaScript code and include that in our HTML page. Okay, so in our new app.js file, we will create the controller constructor function as a function header control. Okay, so in our new app.js file, we'll create a controller constructor function. Now we got the controller created. Let's associate it with the template. We can associate the controller with the HTML using ngController directive. So I have connected the header controller we have created in app.js file with our header view. So when AngularJS will bootstrap this HTML during compilation, when it arrives at this directive, it will look for the constructor function with the name of header controller, and we have written the constructor function for it in our app.js file. So if it gets that function, it will create the object from that function. Now while creating the controller object, the Angular API creates one more object called the $scope object and pass that object as a parameter to controller constructor function. If you remember from the lecture on bootstrapping AngularJS app, we discussed about the directive called ngapp. ngapp is a directive which also creates the scope object. We call it $root_scope object, which contains all the model values. Similarly, our controller also creates the scope object, and it will contain all the model values for this view. Now we have the controller object created for our header view. Let's create data for our header view in the scope object. So first we'll create the object, say app details, for keeping application details data. Next, let's add the title and tagline properties to it. So you can see I have moved the hard-coded values from presentation to our model. Now the question is how we can refer these model values in our view so that the view should be updated if these model values will change. We can use double curlies to refer these models in our view. Let's refer the model in our view. We can refer all the objects reside in the current $scope object using their name directly in the view. So we can refer the app details object directly in the view. So we can write app details.title and app details.tagline in the double curlies to refer those properties directly inside our view. Let's run the application and see. Great! We are getting our model values populated in the view. So you can think of scope as a mediator between the view and the controller. So the action taken on view will go to the controller through the scope, and the model values changes made in controller will be updated in the view through the scope. We can say the view and the controller are married to each other by scope. Okay, so let's revise our journey from static template to dynamic views once again. When Angular compiles the template using $compile service object, It scans through all the directives and bindings in the page.